See, I double as a preacher in the choir here in this place. So, beautiful Scottish air called Calvin Grove was the tune that was set to this hymn called "Will You Come and Follow Me?" Come and follow me if I but call your name. Will you go where you don't know and never be the same? Will you let my love be shown? Will you let my name be known? Will you let my life be grown in yourself behind if I but call your name? Will you care for cruel and kind and never be the same? Will you risk the hostile stare? Should your life attract or scare? Will you let me answer prayer in you and let the blinded see if I but call your name? Will you set the prisoner free and never be the same? Will you kiss the leper clean and do such as this unseen, and admit to what I mean in you and you in me? Will you love the you hide if I but call your name? Will you quell the fear inside and never be the same? Will you use the faith you found to reshape the world around through my sight and touch and sound in you and you in me? Lord, your summons echoes true when you but call my name. Let me turn and follow you and never be the same. In your company I'll go where your love and footsteps show. Thus I'll move and live and grow in you and you in me. We've been so inundated in these last few years with social media. What do we got? Facebook, Instagram, Reddit. There's a guy on Instagram I kind of watch from time to time, and it starts off, he says, beautiful day, got my Bible, going to church, goes out the door, and then it shows some church with some really wacky goings on, or there's a preacher saying some really wild, far out stuff that just does not make sense. And so he goes out, he looks out the door and he closes the door. Nope. There's all kinds of voices that we are exposed to that we are inundated by. Sometimes there are voices on our social media. Sometimes there are voices that descend through the ages. Maybe voices of a mother or a father that are constantly in your head. Maybe there's just voices in the head. Maybe. Lots and lots of voices influencing us in our thinking, in our decision making, in our living. But which are the right ones? Which voices? What voice should we be listening to? So we looked at the Hebrew Scriptures today, looking in the life of Samuel, a young man, young boy, who was offered to the high priest Eli for service in the temple. He was the child of an elderly woman who wanted so desperately to have a child that she promised if God would give her a child that she would give him back to God's service. And so as a young boy, he was helping the priest around the temple. And he was sleeping in the temple by the Ark of God, it says. It was in a very special place in the temple, and probably sleeping there so that he could make sure that the lamp doesn't go out. They kept the lamp burning at all times. And as he's sleeping, he hears a voice. Samuel. Samuel. Well, who could be calling him but Eli? You know, he's there helping Eli. Nobody else in here. It's got to be Eli. And then Eli says, I didn't call you. So go back to sleep. Happened a second time. And finally, the third time, maybe Eli is hearkening back to a time when he was very young. And he remembers that same voice calling him. It's not in the text, I'm just speculating, but for some reason the light bulb comes on, or the oil lamp in that day and age came on in his head. I think that's God calling. So Samuel, the next time you hear this, stay where you are and say, Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. That verse is a fulcrum for all that comes before and after. I always remember as a child, back in the days of Sunday school, when teachers would always, we had a lot of stories from the Hebrew Scriptures in Sunday school, I remember. And they were always done on a flannel graph. Remember the flannel graph? Some of you guys are too young to know what a flannel graph is. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Alex. My work son is here. This is Alex Boudreau. But there's a flannel graph. And I always remember the story. And that's when I read some of these Old Testament stories. I have these pictures in my head. And I got the voice of Mrs. Simpson or somebody that used to teach me Sunday school on Deer Island or maybe up the street here at the Baptist Church. And I remember these stories. And it always seemed to end there. When Samuel finally gets it right and he realizes that God is calling him. It's a story that takes place in the darkness, in the night. And Samuel is sleeping in the place where the Ark of the Covenant is located. And it's night for Eli, whose eyesight is dimming and who has forgotten what God's voice sounds like. It is night for Samuel, who doesn't realize that what he's hearing is the voice of God. And it is night as well for Israel. The first verse of the chapter 3 sets the tone, because the word of the Lord was rare in those days and visions were not widespread. And God speaks to this young boy, Samuel. And Samuel says, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." And with those words, Samuel has opened his eyes and his ears and his heart to what God has to say. He's listening for a truth about himself, a truth for his life, a truth that might chart a way forward. Probably as a young boy, he's not realizing that at the time, but that is what he's doing. And aren't we all, in this day and age of more cacophony on the internet and on television and everywhere around us, aren't we all listening for that kind of truth for ourselves, for our families, for our parish, for our lodge, for our lives? Aren't we listening for that one word or that voice, one voice of truth? We were forced a while back in 2020, to pause. Everything shut down. We found ourselves locked away. And we learned some things about ourselves, or some people did. Because in that time, and again, as always, something big happens globally, we are never the same. But during that time, for many people, it revealed how necessary that kind of deep and intentional listening is. And how difficult it is to sort through all the voices we hear, both within and outside of ourselves, and discern a truthful way forward. I can't imagine what's going on with our neighbors in the south and what is happening now, and the contradictory voices, and sometimes some things that are coming out as a strong voice defies logic to so many people. How do we, in these days, in these confusing times, where do we find that voice? How do we listen to that voice? Who are we listening to these days? Who are you not listening to? What are you listening for? What do you want to hear? And what do you not want to hear? But sometimes what we need to hear is not necessarily what we want to hear. I mean, it wasn't a pretty little message that God gave Samuel. It was pretty dark. It was pretty rough. And then Samuel had to go and tell Eli, "Man, you're toast." That's not. So sometimes listening to that voice, it requires something of us that maybe takes us out of our comfort zone. So as I think on those questions, I recognize in myself two ways of listening. We could think of them at two levels. One at the superficial, and the other is deep. One is represented by the ears, but the other is represented by the heart. One is closed, the other is open. One tends toward safety, the other toward vulnerability. One is static. That's what I want to hear, got my mind made up, that's the way it's going to be, and I'm not moving. That's it. Don't confuse me with the facts. And then the other is dynamic. There's growth. There's movement. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, Presbyterians. It might even require that word, the C word. Change. Oh. You know how many Presbyterians it takes to change a light bulb? Don't touch that light bulb. My grandmother donated that light bulb. No. I'm just saying that because I'm here. I would, take out Presbyterian, I'd put in Anglican, I'd put in, humans are like that, aren't we? We don't like that word change. But that voice we can listen to or need to listen to, it's dynamic. Movement, change is part of it. See if any of this sounds familiar in your life. Sometimes when we hear those things, and I discovered this as when I'm teaching full-time at Fun Day, my grade 9 students, I have certain things I want them to do, certain things they need to do. And what I say goes in one ear, out the other. And you know what? That's not limited to a 15-year-old kid. No. Not at all. I'm sure Wendy would attest. It's nice to have Wendy with us today, isn't it? It's nice to have her with us. We miss you here. And I'm sure she'll say the same about me. One ear, out the other. ADD aside. That's just who we are as humans, isn't it? Our listening can be selective. And we don't really ever outgrow our selective hearing. I think sometimes we grow into it. There are times when I hear only what I want to hear, what I agree with, what affirms my life, what comports with my beliefs. And I expect that may be true for you as well. There was a story of when Jesus was in the process of calling the disciples, and one of the disciples, and when he heard about this Jesus of Nazareth, and I think it was John and James came to him, and he goes, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Like, I don't know. I don't know about this. We have our minds made up, and the older we get, the more crusty those old minds become, don't they? We change the channel when we see something we don't want to see or don't want to hear. We unfollow, we unfriend, we delete the post. We know what we know, believe what we believe, and we don't need someone messing with that. As I said earlier, my mind's made up, don't confuse me with the facts. In this kind of listening, truth is a proposition, it's an absolute, it's a concept to which I either give or withhold my assent. If I agree, then it's the truth. If I don't agree, then it's not the truth. This kind of listening keeps me safe, it keeps me comfortable. It excludes from my life anything that would ask me to change. Oh, there's that C word again. To be different, to move to a new place, to keep my focus on the so-called truth teller and his or her character or lack thereof, and that focus usually looks like my assumptions, my judgments, and my labels. My experience is that superficial kind of listening keeps my world narrow and small. It gives me the illusion that I have the truth, that I know the truth, that I can't but the truth is that I can't have all the truth. So when I listen in my heart, I have the courage, even when I am afraid, to get out from under the shade of my fig tree and go see. I go see what I do not yet know. I go to a place I've never been. I think about something I've never thought. I imagine a possibility I've never considered. In this kind of listening, truth is not a concept, it's a call. It's not a proposition, but a pull. It's not something to be proved or disproved, but something to be done, to which I bear witness by my life. The focus and responsibility are on me as a truth hearer. I can't blame others. I have to step up and take responsibility for my own life. This kind of listening sets before me an invitation to come. Come follow me. Come and see. It asks something of me to change, to go, to reach out, to love, to give, to forgive, to heal, to reconcile. It is an invitation not simply to believe a truth, but to do the truth. Even as I say all these things to you, in the back of my mind, I'm wondering, and is that the truth? Every week, I stand before you to preach the truth. Notice, I did not say I stand before you and preach the truth. I don't know if I do or not. It's my intention, my hope, my prayer, but I don't know. Sometimes you let me know, but I don't know for sure. And I know this, however, I never have all the truth. And if I am not first a truth hearer, I can never be a truth teller. It's not only about preaching, it's about life. And that's not only about me, it's also about you. In order to hear, we need to expect that God will speak to us, that the Word of God will come to us. I wonder what you're hearing today in the deep listening of your heart. What's being asked of you? What truth is waiting to be done by you? What would it look like? What would it mean? And take for you to go to do the truth you've been given to do. And when that happens, God does have the honor and the glory